Ladies and gentlemen, Britain has just witnessed political history collapse in real time. Chaos erupted in Parliament like a thunderclap, shouting, banging on the desk, and in the middle of it all, Prime Minister Keir Starmer, red-faced and raging, he was escorted out under Standing Order 43. The Speaker's gavel wouldn't save him. Security couldn't hide it. Millions around the world watched the moment that Britain's calm technocrat became the face of a total meltdown. But this isn't just a bad day for Labour. This is the beginning of a civil war inside the party, and the spark that just sent Nigel Farage's Reform UK into orbit. Within hours, donations exploded, polls flipped, and a movement that the establishment mocked for years suddenly became the voice of the people. Now, tonight, I'm going to break down exactly how one televised outburst tore the mask off Britain's ruling elite, and it unleashed a political earthquake that is literally still shaking the foundations of Westminster. Because make no mistake, what started in Parliament has spread across the nation, from London to Leeds. Buckle up, guys, because this is the story of the meltdown that destroyed Labour, and it made Farage unstoppable. Hit the like button and subscribe. Okay, folks, ladies and gentlemen, what unfolded inside the Parliament, it wasn't politics. This was pandemonium. The Speaker's gavel was pounding like a war drum, but nobody was listening. Desks slammed, papers flew, members of Parliament stood shouting over one another as their air turned electric. Cameras rolled as the impossible became reality. Standing Order 43 invoked on a sitting Prime Minister, folks. Now, Keir Starmer's face said it all. Shock, rage, disbelief. His own backbenchers stared like they were watching a train wreck in slow motion. Security hesitated, uncertain whether to move or not, right up until the Speaker barked the order: escort the Prime Minister from the chamber. And there it was, guys. History was made in seconds. The chamber exploded in noise as Starmer was guided out, red-faced and defiant, the crowd chanting, "Resign, resign," from both sides. And you could feel the system cracking. The composure, the civility, the illusion of control, all gone. Parliament didn't just erupt. It collapsed under its own hypocrisy. The establishment that claimed to represent the people just imploded on live TV. And outside those walls, something much bigger was already brewing, because this entire disaster didn't start with emotion. It actually started with exposure. So I want to talk about the moment that Nigel Farage dropped the bombshell that lit this entire fuse. So it all began with one man standing up. Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, rose from the benches holding what looked like an ordinary folder. But what came next detonated like dynamite. Calm voice, cold stare. "Mr. Speaker, the British people were promised transparency and sovereignty. Instead, they got deception." He raised the papers, leaked intelligence documents allegedly proving Starmer's government was secretly negotiating with EU officials to rejoin labor migration programs, meanwhile publicly promising the exact opposite. The silence broke instantly. Gasps, shouts of nonsense echoing through the floor. But Farage didn't blink. We have proof that his administration spent millions preparing to reintroduce EU labor quotas without Parliament's knowledge. And that was it, the detonation point. Every MP in the room knew the game had changed. Starmer's ministers exchanged terrified looks as the crowd roared. Farage stood his ground, cool, disciplined, and lethal. The contrast between calm revelation and chaotic denial, it was cinematic. And the British public watching live, they could feel it. Betrayal, lies, a government cornered by truth. That single moment shattered the facade of control, and it sent Britain on a course toward political collapse. Most people don't wake up until it's too late, until their Medicare plan fails them at the pharmacy, the doctor's office, or even at the mailbox. This is why I partner with Chapter. They wake people up early while there's still time to fix their Medicare coverage. Now, one of our viewers, she said, "I wish I'd called sooner, but I'm glad I finally did." So let me ask, are you going to keep sleeping on it, or are you going to join the thousands that are already awake? Now, most people are already calling the phone number down at the bottom of your screen right there, or they're visiting askchapter.org/Ron. I left a link for you down below. That phone number again is 909-563-8279. And if you're wondering whether it really works, just listen to this message from one of our own subscribers right here on our YouTube channel. This came from Steph for the Lord 64. She said, "Ron, I want to thank you. I called Chapter today, followed your link, and Andrew, who answered, said, 'Oh yeah, Ron Yates.' It felt so good. I haven't even started my new plan and already saw I'd be saving monthly by $35, about $420 per year starting 2026. My new plan is unbelievable and I'm grateful. Well, guys, that's what waking up early feels like. Peace of mind before the storm hits. Now, when the speaker turned to Starmer and said, "Prime Minister, do you wish to respond?" This was his chance. He could have taken a breath, calmed the chaos, shown leadership, but instead he snapped. He slammed his notes down, pointed across the benches and shouted, "You're a liar, Farage." His voice cracked, his face flustered. Every camera zoomed in as the supposed calm technocrat morphed into a furious cornered man. MPs froze. The speaker shouted order over and over and over, but Starmer wouldn't stop. Order, order. He accused Farage of poisoning Britain, of fueling hate, of dividing the country. But the more he spoke, the more the chamber turned on him. It wasn't strength. This was panic at this point. And then came the final straw. The speaker invoked Standing Order 43, ordering Starmer's removal. Gasps, total disbelief. The leader of the United Kingdom being escorted out of his own parliament. Cameras rolled as the world watched a man crumble live on air. Now, this wasn't just a meltdown. This was the death of authority. The mask of control shattered. The man who promised stability, he had just detonated his own government. But the explosion didn't stop there. It spread inside Labour itself, tearing the party apart from within. Now, within hours, Labour turned into a battlefield. Advisors panicked, MPs blamed each other, and senior officials begged Starmer to apologize, to show humility. He refused, though. Leaked messages flooded social media, party aides calling the moment a disaster of our own making. Deputy leader Angela Rayner reportedly slammed her desk in frustration. Others whispered about succession plans, Cooper, Streeting, Lammy, all circling like sharks. Meanwhile, the polls nosedived, 15 points gone overnight. Focus groups called Starmer's tone unhinged. Even the BBC struggled to defend him. The so-called party of competence now looked like a sinking ship. Now, behind closed doors, MPs who once praised him were plotting his replacement. One insider said bluntly, "Oh, he's finished. We're watching our leader implode in real time." The image of Starmer being dragged from Parliament became a symbol of collapse, proof that Labour's arrogance had caught up with it. A civil war had begun, and no one was in charge. The Labour machine, built on unity and control, was eating itself alive. And while Labour burned from within, one man stepped into chaos with a calm smile and a plan: Nigel Farage. So while Labour drowned in its own arrogance, Nigel Farage was already steering the lifeboat. Hours after Starmer's removal, Farage held a press conference right on the steps outside of Parliament. No shouting, no chaos, just calm precision. What we witnessed yesterday, he said, was not leadership. It was a breakdown. Now, those words echoed like thunder. Within minutes, clips hit social media, donations to Reform UK exploded. Their website even crashed from the surge in new members. Farage had done what every career politician feared. He turned outrage into organization. He became the calm in the storm, the man who exposed the lie and didn't flinch when the empire cracked. By sunrise, Reform UK had skyrocketed in the polls, closing the gap with Labour faster than anyone ever thought possible. In fact, the headlines were everywhere. Farage rises as Starmer falls. This wasn't a political comeback. This was a referendum on honesty. And as Labour scrambled to plug the leaks, Farage was already walking through the floodwaters, looking straight into the camera and saying, "The people deserve better." That's when the protest began. Bigger, louder, unstoppable. So by midday, London looked like a sea of rebellion. Thousands poured into Parliament Square and Downing Street, flags waving, signs reading, "You lied to Britain, no more betrayal." Now, what made it so powerful wasn't just the size, it was the mix. Working class Labour voters stood shoulder to shoulder with Reform UK supporters and lifelong conservatives. Ordinary Britons united in outrage. The chants were deafening. Resign, resign. Helicopters circled overhead, capturing what looked less like a protest and more like a national awakening. Police formed barriers, but they couldn't contain the anger. Now, for many, this wasn't about party lines. It was about trust. Years of broken promises, rising costs, secret EU talks, and elites laughing while families struggled. This was his payback. Farage's calm presence had lit the fuse, but the people carried the fire. And as the footage flooded global screens, you could pretty much feel the power shift. Labour's arrogance had united the nation against them. From Manchester to Birmingham, Britons were done being ignored. This wasn't just a protest, this was a revolt against betrayal. But what came next took the chaos viral. The media frenzy that turned Britain's humiliation into a worldwide spectacle. And then came the digital detonation. Within minutes of Starmer's removal, the footage spread like wildfire. TikTok, X, YouTube, Facebook. I mean, you just couldn't scroll 2 inches without seeing a new clip. Starmer red-faced, shouting, pointing across the chamber as security moved in, cameras flashing, headlines screaming, PM removed from Parliament live on air. CNN called it Westminster in chaos. Sky News replayed the moment on loop. The BBC, completely speechless, but the real story wasn't just the footage, it was the reaction. Hashtags exploded, hashtag Starmer meltdown, hashtag standing order 43, hashtag PM thrown out. In less than 6 hours, tens of millions of views, memes flooded in comparing Starmer to every failed leader in modern history. Meanwhile, Farage's calm response, the press conference clip, the 50 million views overnight, the image of composure versus collapse, it became the defining symbol of the crisis. Even international sleuths in Washington under President Donald J. Trump's America weighed in. British leadership implodes amid nationalist resurgence. The media tried to spin, but the narrative was already set. Starmer lost control of the chamber, and the internet never gave it back. And once the world saw it, the real damage began. The collapse of trust, credibility, and everything Labour once claimed to stand for. Now, Starmer had built his image on being calm, methodical, the man who would steady the ship after chaos, right? But after that meltdown, the ship was already sinking. And he was the iceberg. Focus groups described him as unhinged. Polling revealed Labour's approval had plunged 15 points in 24 hours. Even loyal voters felt betrayed. He embarrassed us, said one caller live on BBC Radio. We gave him our trust and he threw it away on live television. Now, behind the black door on number 10, insiders described a ghost of a man pacing his office, snapping at staff, refusing to face cameras. Advisors urged him to speak, to show remorse, but he just couldn't. Every hour of silence became another headline. Where's the prime minister? Even Labour's own MPs began questioning his fitness to lead. The man once hailed as Mr. Integrity now looked like a liability holding the party hostage. And the British people watching his downfall unfold frame by frame, they knew exactly what they were seeing. This was clearly the collapse of credibility in real time. But to really understand how Britain reached this breaking point, you have to look beneath the surface at the betrayal and the backroom deals that lit this fire long before the meltdown. So here's the truth that most of the media won't say. This meltdown didn't start in the chamber. It actually started in the shadows. For months, quiet rumors swirled that Starmer's government was holding off-the-books talks with EU officials, discussing the reintroduction of labor quotas, migration programs, and cross-border funding deals, all while publicly preaching sovereignty and British control. Now, those leaks that Farage revealed, they weren't just embarrassing. They were confirmation of everything that working-class Britons feared. The betrayal of Brexit, the return of Brussels' influence. Inside the Treasury, aides warned Starmer that voters wouldn't tolerate secret negotiations, but he ignored them. And at the same time, Labour's economic missteps, the tax hikes, the welfare pullbacks, green subsidies, they were piling up like dry kindling, waiting for a spark. So when Farage dropped that folder, it wasn't just about one scandal. This was the ignition point of years of deceit. The people who felt silenced, overtaxed, and betrayed finally saw proof that they had been right all along. This wasn't spontaneous rage. This was righteous anger unleashed. The spark was Parliament, but the explosion came from the people who had been lied to. And that explosion didn't just change Labour. It actually is changing Britain itself. So let's go ahead and close the fallout with what's reshaping politics on both sides of the Atlantic. So Britain has clearly just entered uncharted territory. Labour is in free fall. Its foundations cracked beyond repair. Nigel Farage now stands where no outsider has stood in decades, on the brink of political dominance. Reform UK is no longer a protest movement. This is a populist wave sweeping through the heart of Westminster. Now, across the Atlantic, President Donald J. Trump congratulated Britain for finally exposing globalist deceit, calling it a victory for the people, not the politicians. President Donald J. Trump's words echoed what millions felt, that this wasn't just about a prime minister's collapse. It was about the global backlash against elite corruption. In pubs and factories and small towns and major cities, the sentiment is the same. We'd had enough. enough manipulation, enough hypocrisy, enough fake leadership. Starmer's fall is now a warning shot heard around the world. A reminder that when leaders forget the people will remind them who's in charge. Now, Britain's establishment thought that they were untouchable. Tonight, we're watching the walls tremble because this wasn't just political theater. It was the moment that the empire blinked. And as the smoke clears over Westminster, one question hangs in the air. If it can happen here, well, who's next?